Well, we're live. We're live to YouTube. Hope everybody is well. All is looking good, and welcome to Mortgage CMAP live stream. So new platform today. We've gone for a StreamYard now as our new platform. Brand new Logitech streaming camera, which is designed for streaming. So it kind of gets your focus here and here. And hopefully all is right. It's all looking good down there. Got a little ticker there, advisorcpd.com. Everything's looking great. For those of you on podcast, of course, you don't get to see any of this, do you? We get to hear me anyway for 15 to 20 minutes of mortgage goodies. So what have we got planned for you today? A little bit of update for you on the fiscal market going on right now. Then we're going to take a look at equity release fact finding. And we've got a little sales skill for you coming up later as well to help you in your mortgage advising. So that's coming up a little bit later. Let's take a look at the Bank of England then. Take a look at some numbers because we're right in the middle of releasing lockdown now, which is great. And all is good there. But the Bank of England are financing the government at the moment. And there's a huge amount of borrowing going on now. And we're looking at borrowing up to £200 billion, which is about 10% of our gross domestic product, 10% of GDP. There's a huge amount of money. And the Bank of England, of course, have been voting to start the printing presses even more, printing more and more money. Now, the latest figures, and we're talking here about fiscal, aren't we? Fiscal versus monetary, which again is people are getting confused with these two, and they are mixing around. And CMAP 1, of course, you're covered under this, aren't you? Now, as far as government spending is concerned, which of course is fiscal, isn't it? When governments spend money on things, it's called fiscal, and that's how they control the economy. And right now, the government, they reckon, are spending, and this comes from the government figures, £14 billion a week. Now, you can soon do your maths. So £14 billion, there's an awful lot of money. And we're spending that weekly at the moment to fund the furlough scheme, the Sybil's loans, the bounce back loans, funding, buying into British Airways, buying into various different companies to try and fund them, buying into shareholding. So the government are spending to keep the economy frozen. Now we're releasing the economy now. They're hoping for things to start to pick up quickly. Whether they will or not, we don't know. Officially, we're in a recession, of course we are, but it's whether the downturn really bites. And what's happened is that the Monetary Policy Committee, the MPC as they call themselves, the Monetary Policy Committee, who meet up to talk about interest rates. As you know, they're really keeping interest rates as low as possible. They were thinking about going negative, which is really weird, isn't it? But they've actually voted now to expand the money printing now. We're looking to do quantitative easing now of about 150 billion, 200 billion pounds. But remember, 200 billion is 10% of our gross domestic product. And that's how they measure the amount of borrowing we've got. We've got more borrowing now than we did after the Second World War. This is kind of like wartime borrowing. We borrowed money to pay for Spitfires and Lancaster bombers then, but now we're borrowing money to pay for people's salaries. Slight difference, but I guess it's the same kind of thing. So what's happening then is that QE is monetary policy. Quantitative easing is monetary policy. That's printing money to pay for government spending. Rather than taxing the population, we're printing the stuff itself. And by printing, what's happening is that the Bank of England are buying the government bonds that they're issuing. So you look at it a certain way, because you've got the Bank of England over here, for example, the Bank of England, and you've got the UK government over here. Let's put the UK Treasury over here. Now, the UK Treasury, of course, is the department that's doing all this spending, and they normally get their money, of course, by taxing us. But obviously, they also borrow as well by issuing gilts. And the UK Treasury are issuing gilts by the bucket load now to finance this little lot. Of course they are. There's no tax money coming anymore. They postponed VAT anyway. So VAT brings in about 150 billion. It's huge amounts of money. So they're postponing all that. But these gilts, you see, they've got to be able to get people to buy these gilts. So all the Bank of England are doing is they're printing all this money with a printing press, and they're buying the gilts with this printed money. So, and the bank obviously talks to the UK Treasury. They're all in cahoots, aren't they? So basically, we're printing money to pay for all of this. That's why the government can afford to pay for it. It's not a lot more to it than that. But the big issue is, though, this will cause, at some point, inflation, because monetarism says the more money you put into an economy and you expand the money supply, the busier it gets, the more buoyant the economy gets. People start doing stuff, the economy bounces on nicely. That, of course, will tend to cause inflation. And inflation could be a problem. But at the moment, of course, inflation's not a problem. Let me put some numbers up for you, just to sort of give you an idea where inflation's going. And I'll stick these up there in the middle there for you. I don't know if you can see that on your video. Obviously on podcast you can't, but that little chart there is showing you what inflation's done over the last sort of 10 years or so. And right now inflation's down to about 0.5, 0.7%, I think it popped down to. Whereas the last few years, of course, it's varied from 3% down to sort of 0%. That's the CPI that they use to measure inflation. At the moment, it's about 0.5%, because things ain't doing much good, are they? That's why inflation's low. Petrol prices have come right down. It costs, what, £1 for a litre of petrol now, whereas a couple of months back it was 130 pence. The costs of everything's coming down, which of course is keeping inflation low. So inflation's not a problem now. It'll probably be a problem next year or year after, because QE will create that at some point. So that's the state of the nation, really. Like it. I love the way that we can just print money. I wish I could build a cellar and make a machine that prints money. That'd be rather nice and handy, wouldn't it? But not always the way to operate. So let's take a look at a more serious topic now. We're going to get into the topic of equity release for you. And some of you might be doing your equity release exams, some of you may not be. Hi, let's take a look at equity release and fact finding as far as we're concerned with equity release. And I want to sort of pin out the things that you need to do for equity release fact finding compared to normal mortgage fact finding. So I'm going to title this one then Equity Release Fact Finding is the title. Got extra big pens here for you, so you can read what it says on the whiteboard there. Now, nice and big writing there for you, no idea. And we're talking here about fact finding. So what sort of things do you need to do then when it comes to fact finding and equity release? Let's take a look at some of the things that we need to do. Let's pick up that pen a second. And the first thing, of course, with any fact finding, you've got all the usual facts, haven't you? All the information that they've got, bank statements, etc. So you've got all the usual facts as well that come into normal mortgage fact finding. And here you could be looking at the person's assets, money they've got, pension money, property, savings, investments, their income, their expenditure. All the usual facts come into equity release fact finding, as in any kind of fact finding. Now, open banking, of course, is changing everything. That's where the bank's computer system can talk to your current account bank. So if you're borrowing the money from, say, Legal & General, their computer systems can talk to your bank and then access all the information it needs to get the facts rather than you filling out a form. So that's all coming in the future as well. During the fact finding, you do need to talk about alternatives. That's a real big thing with equity release. It's the alternatives to actually having a releasing equity on your property. So, and you've got to discount the ones that are not appropriate. So borrowing from family, getting interest-free credits, using welfare benefits, other ways of borrowing the money or getting the money you need to look at as well. You also need to take a look at the welfare benefits. So what welfare benefits is the customer getting at the moment? So pensions, credit, that sort of thing. And would your equity release destroy their ability to claim those benefits? And you've got to go onto websites like entitled.com. You've got to look at grants and things that they could get, of course, for the work they want to do to the property. So you've got to look at the impact your advice is going to give on welfare benefits. Really important part of that one as well. Naturally, get a different colour here, you need to take a look at the health of the customer. And what they're particularly interested in here is there a power of attorney in place? Do you need to be talking to the next of kin or the children who, of course, have that power of attorney? It might well be an enhanced lifetime mortgage that you might be looking at as well, because if the health is not as good as it could be. Naturally, you can take a look at income as well. You're going to take a look at the person's income, which probably comes under the facts as well. It may well be that the customer can afford to make interest payments on their mortgage. Can they make a voluntary payment, for example? Can the family pay interest? So you don't have to have roll-up mortgages all the time in equity release land. You can have a retirement interest-only mortgage. You can have a hybrid roll-up mortgage where you can pay interest if you can afford it, but as soon as you can't afford it, you don't have to pay interest. So that's another one. We're not looking at affordability here in the traditional mortgage sense of paying for a mortgage. We're not looking at taking through an affordability calculation. If it's a roll-up mortgage that the customer can revert to at some point. House occupancy. Who else is going to be living in the house is a key one. House occupancy. There you go. They're quite keen on this one, particularly if you're going to go for some kind of home reversion plan as well. We need to look at who else is going to be occupying the property. Is it going to be family? Is it going to be children? The underwriters will want to take a look at that as well. So that's a key one as well. So dependents, of course, would come into this if they're living in the house and they are dependent upon you. In fact, the couple or the people that you're dealing with may well have dependents as well, and that, of course, can come into it as well. Naturally, the property needs to be looked at in some detail. The property itself. Now, if you think about it, equity release doesn't rely on somebody's income to pay a mortgage. It relies on the property to go up in value effectively to support the expanding mortgage. Now, a lot of lenders in the equity lease market are very picky about the property, and rightly so. So it's the location of the property is key. Some only consider the south of England, which is awful, really, if you think about it. Is it a leasehold property? What's the unexpired term of the lease? What's the maintenance costs involved as well? Because the lender is taking the property into account. Is there an annex on the property, for example, which is taking an income? All sorts of aspects come into the property itself. How is it owned? Is it joint tenancy? Is it tenants in common? Is it owned in trust? Is the property in some kind of property trust? These things will come into their own. A lot of people you'll find, or some people you'll find in the later years, would have put the property in trust for their children, some kind of discretionary trust to avoid inheritance tax. So you need to look at the ownership of the property as well. Some require joint tenancy rather than tenants in common because of the way that the property itself is going to be taken in the event of death of both parties. So they'll look at how it's owned as well. Debts, of course. What kind of debts does the customer have? That comes into it naturally. And will you be wanting to take over those debts with regards to the equity release? Is it a debt consolidation reasons coming through, which is key to the whole thing, isn't it? So look at that. Are there any county court judgments registered against the couple? Is there any adverse credit that they have as well? So you need to look at that area, and of course that's going to be looked at. There's going to be a credit search done on the people taking out the mortgage as well. Other things for you, future plans. That's really a key one, actually. Future plans and objectives. A lot of people think it's facts that you're taking in now, do a fact find effectively, but you really do need to look at what's going on with the customer. And we promote this thing called a lifeline, which allows you to talk about the customer's present situation and their future situation. Something that's called past, present, future. That's a good little model to work upon. But you've got to have a ding-dong conversation about what their plans are for the future to make sure that the advice you give is future-proof to a certain degree. Now, you can look at things like income, employment, the home situation, the family situation. Don't just think about the property, think about their life, which is what we call the lifeline. The lifeline is a lovely discussion document which you can have. It's a piece of paper effectively where you divide it off into graphs and you talk about their family, you talk about their home, you talk about their employment, you talk about sort of their income opportunities, different subjects, both past, present and future. So obviously talk about the present, which is the fact finding, but what does it look like in the future? So are they looking to downsize, move to the coast? Maybe have they got grandchildren coming on steam? That's what. So you really do need to look at future plans in detail. And that's a nice little snapshot for you of equity release fact finding. There's a whole lot more going on here. And many equity release advisors will do this over a period of time, particularly if you're using a Zoom or video capability to talk to your customers. There's nothing wrong with you having a fact find meeting with the children, for example, if you're talking about house occupancy, that sort of thing. The next of kin who are going to inherit the property might want to be involved in the discussion, particularly with the lifeline. There's nothing wrong with you doing a 1, 2, 3 sort of meetings spread over sort of half hour a piece using Zoom as a technology or Facebook Live, whatever it is you want to use. But you do need to talk about all these areas, and it's good to have a decent conversation behind that. A lot of mortgage advisors or equity release advisors are looking at taking fees up front now for this kind of service, because you're going to be giving advice on welfare benefits or advice, but you're going to be talking about alternatives, for example, way before you ever got to recommend the mortgage or the home reversion plan, whatever it is, where you start earning your proc fee. So you need to look at your income stream here as well. So it gives you a few ideas. Hope that's been useful. Bye. Ha! There we go. Hopefully you enjoyed that one. That's a little bit of updating for you then on equity release fact finding. Okay, let's get on to a little sales topic for you, just to finish things off for you. Hope the new live streaming is working well for you. Let's say we've got this new company now which we're using to live stream. Brand new camera as well, nice little streaming camera which gives you lots of good focus. So hopefully the focus is pretty good there on YouTube. I can see it down there. It's looking okay, actually. Let's talk about what I call the pound coin and misconceptions. Now, we're talking about giving people advice. We're talking about talking to people, fact-finding customers, clients. And in the business world, of course, we often fall foul of misconceptions. You might meet a customer, for example, and you might think they haven't got a couple of quid in their pocket to pay a fee, but you don't know. You've just made an impression by what they look like. And what people look like is really key, be it on video with a shirt and tie or whatever, or face-to-face physically with a shirt and tie. People perceive things differently from how you look. And that's very dangerous. So this little tip here for you. I call it the pound coin. There you go. The pound coin and misconceptions is the sort of title that I want you to take a look at. So I don't want you to be taken in by looks. A couple of years back, in fact, this was April or springtime 2018, I went to the gym, and I used to go to the gym before lockdown, of course. When I go to the gym, this was sort of April time, it was quite warm, and I just wore my shorts and a t-shirt and cycled off to the gym in Cheltenham. I got this very old top now, the gym top I call it. Shelley's been kind enough to sew it all up and repair it for me. But it's probably about 15, 20 years old now, and it's all torn and everything, but it's really comfortable. And I have my shorts and my trainers, obviously. I cycled to the gym, did my workout. I thought I'd nip to Tesco's on the way back to get some things for a Sunday afternoon lunch. I wanted to get myself some hummus and some olives and some bread, like you do on a Sunday afternoon. So I popped into Tesco's, but I didn't have my wallet with me because I hadn't thought about bringing my wallet with me. And on my bicycle, I got a pannier at the back. So I rooted around the pannier and found some pound coins in one of the sort of zip pockets, which obviously left there in case of emergency. I thought, there's enough here. I'll go and get my hummus. So I went to Tesco's. I picked up this box of hummus and some biscuits and some bread and some olives, all very nice. Went to the checkout and gave the items to the lady who pinged it, and I gave her the money, and she looked at the money and she said, she said, "No, sorry, sir, you can't use this money. It's not legal tender." So little did I know, of course, that these were old pound coins, which over a 6-month period lost their ability to be used. You can put them into charity boxes, but you couldn't actually use them. I was well embarrassed because I was in this queue. So I had to say to them, "Look, take back the hummus." I said, "Oh, I've got enough still," because one of the pound coins was okay. Take back the olives, and I'll just have the bread. So I had this bread, which I walked out of the shop with, looking very embarrassed, of course. And I was unlocking my bicycle. This chap in his car, I saw him earlier actually, a nice chap he was. He was a bit of a gentleman, and he was looking for some Aunt Bessie's roast potatoes in the Tesco's store. I think what happened, he was obviously having a Sunday lunch back at home, and he was sent by his wife probably to get some roast potatoes. He didn't know where to go. He was completely lost in this supermarket, probably never been in a supermarket in his life. And he asked the lady there, and she guided him to where the Aunt Bessie's potatoes were. Thoroughly nice chap, wasn't harming anybody. But outside, he got into his car. He had this great big BMW 7 Series 4x4. It's like a tank, it's like a T-34 tank, this great big thing. And he drove past me, and he stopped, pulled his window down and pressed the button, didn't he? And he gave me a handful of change, of different coinage. He said, "There you go." He said, "Go and get that food that you couldn't get. And I thought to myself, oh, how lovely of him. I was ever so embarrassed. I said, no, it's okay. Thank you very much for your kind offer. He said, of course, please do take the money. And I was ever so red-faced and I'm very embarrassed by all of that. And I didn't take it, which is probably wrong. But I thought to myself as I was cycling home, that guy probably saw me in the store with this old T-shirt, knackered thing with holes in it, an old pair of shorts and trainers. And at the checkout, having to pass back the hummus and the olives and just having bread to go home for my Sunday lunch, where he was having probably a roast dinner and champagne, all those things. He probably thought I was a bit of a down and out, probably needed a bit of a helping hand. So he gave me the money. How untrue can you be? It's just the way I was looking, wasn't it? I just had no money at the time. So the story really is, beware of misconceptions. Beware of first impressions, because mostly they're wrong. You make a first impression by looking at somebody, what they're wearing, what they're looking like. I mean, I haven't worn a suit and tie since like ever. I can't remember the last time I wore a tie. And I've got an old shirt here with short sleeves today. People, the way they look now is changing. Now, you will make the odd misconception, the odd first impression that's wrong. Your customer will do the same. Beware of your first impressions, of course. If you're dealing with the later life market, for example, somebody in their mid-80s, you should be wearing a suit and tie because that's what they expect. So if you rocked up in a sort of polo shirt because that's the way you roll, they might think, oh, this person doesn't know what they're talking about, because they're based upon their frame of existence, you see, how they frame things. So you've got to be careful what you look like. Don't make the mistake of making a wrong misconception when you meet somebody as well. First impressions do make a difference in things as well. Now, the whole point, of course, though, is that my pound coin, my one left, I went home and I was rooting around the house for old pound coins. I thought I better find these old things in case I spend them. Went down to the charity box. The air ambulance still takes them. So a nice little story for you. Hope that's been useful. Bye. There you go. Do you like that one, did you? Hope you enjoyed that one. We're going to sign off now because we've been operating now for about 20 minutes. So hope you enjoyed the live stream. We're going to see you again next week. Have a great week, everybody. Bye.